Imagine you build the most powerful army in the world. They're loyal, they're disciplined, they're unstoppable. And then one day they look at you and go, actually, what if we ran things? And they did, 12 times. This is the story of the Janissaries, the army that was built to protect the Ottoman throne and spent 461 years trying to take it. There's a knock on your door. You're a Christian boy, 8 years old, maybe 10, living in a village in the Balkans. Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, Albania. Normal day, normal life, Ottoman officers are outside. They are looking at the boys in the village. They look at you, they point, and your parents cannot say no. This was called the Devshirme, translated literally blood tax. Every few years, Ottoman recruiters would come through Christian territories and take the strongest, smartest, most promising boys they could find, taken from their families, converted to Islam, renamed and rebuilt completely from the ground up into something entirely new, not Serbian, not Greek, not Christian, Ottoman. Here's where it gets interesting. Some parents tried to get their sons taken voluntarily because a janissary wasn't a slave with no future. A janissary was guaranteed food, training, housing, and pay, and if you were good enough, you could rise to run the entire empire. Some of the most powerful grand viziers in Ottoman history were former Christian boys taken through the Devshirme. So for a poor peasant family in the 1400s, the choice was option A, your son stays in the village, farms, dies farming. Option B, your son gets taken by the Ottomans and potentially becomes one of the most powerful men in the world. Some parents bribed the recruiters. Please take my son, which is either the saddest thing you've ever heard or the most calculated parenting decision in history, possibly both. You arrive in Anatolia, new name, new religion, new language, everything you were before gone. The training starts immediately. You spend years, sometimes a decade, in the palace system before you're even a janissary yet. You learn Turkish, you learn Arabic, you learn to fight, you learn to march in formation, you learn to shoot, you learn discipline, the kind that becomes automatic, the kind where you don't think, you just act. And you learn one rule above everything else: loyalty. To the Sultan, only the Sultan, always the Sultan. No wife, no children, no property, no beard, just a mustache. You are the Sultan's man. That's it. That's the whole job. In exchange, you get the best equipment in the empire, the best spy, the best food, and you get to belong to something. Because here's what the Janissaries actually were underneath all the military stuff: a family. Here's the detail that makes everything else make sense. The Janissaries had a sacred object, not a flag, not a religious relic, not a golden weapon, a soup cauldron. Their giant cooking pot was the center of their entire identity. They ate together from it. They lived around it. Their regiment commanders were literally called soup servers. Senior officers were called head cooks. The cauldron represented the unit, the brotherhood, the bond. And when Janissaries wanted to signal rebellion against the Sultan, they didn't pick up swords first. They overturned the cauldron. The soup hits the floor. Everyone knows what that means. Multiple sultans throughout history saw their cauldrons get overturned and immediately started reconsidering recent life choices. The soup cauldron was the Ottoman equivalent of a strongly worded letter, except the letter was 10,000 armed men and a giant metal pot full of soup hitting the ground in front of the palace gates. By the 1400s, the Janissaries are the most feared infantry force in Europe. When Mehmed the Conqueror takes Constantinople in 1453, the Janissaries lead the final assault. When Selim the Grim conquers Egypt and becomes caliph, the Janissaries are with him. When Suleiman the Magnificent reaches the gates of Vienna, the Janissaries are there. Every major Ottoman victory for 2 centuries, the Janissaries are at the center of it. Europe gives them a nickname, the Terrible Turks, which, if you think about it, is kind of a compliment. They were the first standing professional army in Europe since the fall of the Roman Empire. While European armies were still mostly feudal knights and seasonal levies, the Janissaries were a permanent professional salaried trained force. Napoleon Bonaparte later said that armies travel on their stomachs. meaning logistics and food supply, win wars. The Janissaries understood these 400 years before Napoleon said it. Hence the soup cauldron, hence the head cook as a military officer. They weren't just soldiers, they were a system. And here is where things go sideways, because the Janissaries start to realize something. They are the most powerful military force in the empire, which means technically, the Sultan needs them more than they need the Sultan, and they start to act accordingly. The rule about no marriage, gone by the late 1500s. Now Janissaries can marry, have children, pass their positions to their sons. The rule about Devshirme only, gone too. Anyone can buy their way into the core now. The rule about no civilian trades, still technically a rule. In practice, by the 1700s, Janissaries run shops, own businesses, and collect military pay while doing absolutely zero military things. They are now a hereditary, privileged, politically connected, increasingly untouchable class, who also happen to be heavily armed. Sultan, we need military reforms. Great idea. Let's start with the Janissaries. Never mind, the Janissaries are perfect as they are. This conversation happened multiple times with multiple sultans. Three sultans try to reform or replace the Janissaries. Sultan Selim III tries in 1807. The Janissaries find out. They dethrone him. Then they kill him. His successor learns from this and immediately does nothing at all. Here's the number. The Janissaries overthrew 12 Ottoman sultans. 12 not deposed, not peacefully removed, overthrown, exiled, blinded, murdered. One sultan, Osman II, in 1622, tried to build a replacement army to reduce their power. The Janissaries heard about it. They captured him. The official Ottoman record lists his cause of death as compression of the genitals. I'm going to leave that exactly where it is and move on. The point is, by the 1700s, you don't become sultan without Janissary approval. You don't stay sultan if you make them angry, and you definitely don't try to replace them. The weapon the sultans built to protect the throne had become the biggest threat to the throne. By the early 1800s, the Janissary Corps is a disaster. There are 135,000 registered Janissaries. Most of them haven't fought in a real war recently. Many of them are merchants, shopkeepers, craftsmen, collecting military salaries while running their textile businesses. They reject every new military technology, bayonets, infidel weapons. No linear formations, European nonsense. Absolutely not. New training methods? How dare you suggest we improve? Meanwhile, Europe has completely modernized its armies. The Janissaries, who were once centuries ahead of everyone, are now decades behind. And the Ottoman Empire is losing wars it would have won easily 200 years ago. But every time a reformist sultan tries to modernize the military, soup on the floor. You know what that means. Then comes Sultan Mahmud II. And Mahmud is different. Mahmud doesn't panic. He doesn't rush. He doesn't announce anything. He watches, he waits, he plans for years. Mahmud II has been quietly building support for years. The people of Istanbul, who by this point absolutely despise the Janissaries for their arrogance, their extortion, their thuggery in the streets, are with him. His loyal artillery units are positioned. His new European trained forces are ready. And then Mahmud makes his move. He announces a new military training program. Just training, very innocent, nothing alarming. The Janissaries do exactly what they always do. They overturn the cauldrons. They march toward the palace. They revolt, and Mahmud is ready. His forces surround the Janissary barracks. The people of Istanbul join in, and then the artillery opens fire directly into the barracks. The building burns. Thousands of Janissaries die. The survivors are hunted down, exiled, or executed. In Thessaloniki, survivors are beheaded in what becomes known as the Blood Tower, and the Ottoman Empire officially names this event the Auspicious Incident, Vakai Hariye, the lucky event. The empire looked at thousands of people dying and said, yeah, that was great actually, 2 weeks after destroying the Janissaries, Mahmud II establishes a new modern army. He trains them with European officers. He gives them European tactics, European weapons, European formations. The empire that had built its greatest military force by taking Christian boys from Europe was now hiring Europeans to teach its soldiers how to fight. And here's the final detail. The Janissaries existed for 461 years. 461 years. They were created in 1365. They were destroyed in 1826. They started as Christian boys with no choice. They became the most feared soldiers in the world. They became so powerful, they overthrew sultans. They became so corrupt, they stopped being soldiers, and they were destroyed by the one sultan patient enough to outweigh them. The army that was built to be unstoppably loyal ultimately became loyal to only one thing, itself, which, if you think about it, is maybe the oldest story there is. That's the Janissaries. Not the legend, not the clean version, the actual story. A system that worked perfectly, right up until the moment it worked too well. If you made it here, you already know what to do. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next live. Lorevox out.